Today, we have filed a lawsuit against a number of entities that we believe contributed to the very tragic death of 3-year-old Lily Shambrook. And amongst those entities we have named in the complaint are Commonwealth Edison and Mondelez Trucking Company and Penske, which happened to be the owner of the vehicle Mondelez was operating, and also the city of Chicago. And we're not intending today to go into all the very specific details of the actual incident. However, we wanted just to give you a little overview of the bases for our complaint and kind of the circumstances that existed at that day that rendered this intersection very dangerous and contributed to causing Lily's death. The Commonwealth Edison company was operating a large utility truck, had a trailer attached to it. It pulled up to the intersection of Leland Avenue and Winthrop Avenue in the Uptown neighborhood. Leland, by the way, is what's known as a greenway, and it had a designated bike lane marked on the street, marked with a sign along the side of the curb area, and Commonwealth Edison pulled up literally to a stop sign that was also located at this intersection in an area obviously illegal because of its proximity to the stop sign. They literally, as you may see, at least from the animation we have prepared, were blocking part of the pedestrian crosswalk in front of the truck. And very importantly for this case, the ComEd truck was obstructing the bike lane. And Kate Snow, Lily's mom, were riding their bike eastbound on Leland on this nice summer morning. And Lily was on a carrier seat on the back of Kate's bike. Kate's husband and the father of Lily, Tim Shambrook, was following behind them on his own bike. They were riding in the bike lane, and as they approach Winthrop, they encounter an obstruction by the Commonwealth Edison truck protruding into the bike lane. That forced Kate to have to veer into the traffic, and at the same time, there was a large semi-tractor trailer truck that was also traveling eastbound on Leland. And we have brought claims against Mondelez. They were the operators of this truck, as well as Penske, who we believe were the owners. And I think there's a number of reasons that Mondelez also has liability. The first of which is this truck realistically just was unsafe to be on this street on a greenway in a substantially residential neighborhood. It's only one way each way, east and west, and this is a very large semi-tractor trailer truck. And we believe that the driver was not keeping a proper lookout for bicyclists when this is a known and marked bike lane, he would have had to have passed Lily and Kate and Tim just a short distance before they got up to where he had then stopped at a stop sign. And we also believe that he continued even after there was contact between the bike, Kate's bike, and the Mondelez truck and the ComEd truck that this Mondelez truck kept going through the intersection, and literally Tim Shambrook himself, as well as some other bystanders, had to start chasing the truck and screaming for him to stop. Lastly, we have also named the city of Chicago, and we think that they substantially contributed to this very tragic death as well, for a number of reasons. The city had actually, we have determined so far, granted Commonwealth Edison a permit to stage some equipment, construction-related equipment, on Winthrop Street, which was the north-south street. However, we believe there really were inadequate safeguards to determine, how much equipment, what size of equipment, is there realistically areas for this equipment to be parked, and we don't believe they should issue these permits for what they know is going to be large utility trucks without having some safeguards. And most importantly, they shouldn't be doing it when they know this, they're granting a permit for addresses on Winthrop that went all the way up to the intersection with Leland, which is exactly where the designated bike path passed through. So essentially they were telling ComEd, you can bring in a lot of equipment, heavy duty equipment, and park it all the way up to the corner, and stage it all the way up to the corner where a bike path is passing through. And that just creates a dangerous situation, because it encourages and literally results in Commonwealth Edison bringing in exactly the type of equipment they brought in, and there's nowhere for them to put it. And they usurped the safety of this bike lane and had their vehicle in this bike lane, obstructing the bike lane, and instead of being where it should be. And additionally, the city, we also believe, has responsibility, because they simply should not have been allowing semi-tractor trailer trucks to be passing through this area of Leland, which is a designated bike lane, designated greenway. It's passing through a residential neighborhood on a relatively narrow street with one lane eastbound, one lane westbound. There are two large commercial multi-lane streets, just a block north, a block south, Wilson and Lawrence Avenue. And those are the streets that the city should have been requiring the large tractor trailer trucks to be using. And there was substantial construction going on different projects just down the street on Winthrop, at the L platform over on Lawrence. And I believe, and we certainly think, it resulted in excessive traffic on Leland by these large trucks, because the trucks wanted to avoid being on the Wilson or Lawrence, and where construction is going on, where maybe it's slower. And there's even an issue as to the size of the overpass. There's a bridge or L platform overpass, and the heights vary. And the truckers were taking advantage of this by a somewhat higher bridge height on Leland, and using this street as a thoroughfare when a greenway. And Christina will comment on this as well, that is specifically designed for the pleasure of our citizens to be safe in using the greenway and the designated bike lane for enjoyment and to enjoy all the green spaces in our city. So those are an overview of the allegations we have brought. What we call discovery, meaning further investigation of details, it will start now, and more details will be determined as we evaluate all the testimony and evidence that results during the course of discovery. And so in addition to that, we also had a little animation created, and we just, again, it is not intended to be a reenactment of this incident by any means whatsoever, but we wanted to be able to give you a better idea of an overview of the incident and the location and the circumstances that converged here and all contributed to Lily's death. And so, Mitch, if you could pull that up, and my partner Brad Cosgrove will comment on some of what we've depicted here.
Recording in progress.
As you guys could see, the Leland Avenue street travels east and west, and on the south side of the road there is a designated bike lane, which is known as a greenway, that is meant for bicyclists to ride in, and there's parking to the right of that. And as the roadway approaches, there was a Commonwealth Edison truck illegally parked for two reasons. First, it was parked too close to a stop sign. Second, it was parked within a designated bike lane, obstructing anyone on the bike lane from being able to pass by, such that anyone who went by had to unfortunately go out into the street, because for anyone over the age of 12 operating a bicycle, it's illegal for them to ride their bike on the sidewalk. So it would be illegal for them to go any other way other than to being forced to enter into the street. The Commonwealth Edison obstruction led to create a situation where there was no other place for the bicyclists to go on the day other than out into the lane of travel, which is what is part of the reason why Commonwealth Edison was named in this case. There was a permit that was issued by the city of Chicago, as Mr. Burke indicated earlier, and the permit permitted parking on the roadway to the right in the animation, and there was not permitted to have parking on the stretch of Leland where the Commonwealth Edison truck was stationed. At the time, we have an obstructed bike lane that did not allow for the use of the bike lane in its intended purpose. In the city of Chicago, we have found in the recent years fatalities, deaths of people on bicycles, has increased 2 times as much as in the years prior, according to some reputable sources. And of those deaths, we've learned that about 40% of those deaths involve minors. So we filed a lawsuit in this case to try to find justice for Lily and to make sure that we have all of the responsible entities named in the lawsuit, to have all of the facts brought together to understand why it is this bike lane was obstructed, why it is that the city allowed this to happen, and why it is that after the point of contact, the semi-truck didn't stop and continued to go forward for what appears to be more than 30 feet. Why it is that this crash took place on a greenway that should never have happened. We think that through the use of this lawsuit, we're going to have a few goals accomplished. First, we're going to get justice for Lily and her family. But second, we're also going to be able to increase awareness for the biking community in Chicago to make sure that there's safety and to make sure that Obstructions do not take place because, as you're going to hear in a moment, this issue of obstruction, and specifically obstruction with other Commonwealth Edison vehicles, has happened a number of times in the past. At this point, I think we're going to turn over our discussion to...
Yeah, Christina Whitehouse is with us. She is from Bike Lane Uprising. Christina is the founder, and her organization are strong advocates for bike safety, and she is very knowledgeable about the hazards that exist in our city for bicyclists. And with that, Christina, why don't you go ahead and make a few comments.
In 2017, I founded Bike Lane Uprising. As many of you know, Bike Lane Uprising is a civic tech platform. It's used for allowing cyclists the ability to document bike lane obstructions and add them to our database so that we can then track them and hold violators accountable. And the goal is that we can prevent bike lane obstructions like this and deaths like this in the future. As mentioned a moment ago, it is illegal to bike on the sidewalk if you are 12 years old or older. While there's around 4,500 miles of streets in Chicago, there's 35 miles of what the city states are protected bike lanes. And when the city defines a bike lane as protected, it means that there's some sort of delineation. Oftentimes those are flexible posts. Those flexible posts have long been torn down in many of those locations. So while we state that there's 35 miles of bike lanes, it's actually probably quite less than that. Greenways are even more rare. And the city actually defines greenways. The Department of Transportation defines greenways, specifically the Leland Greenway, as a low-stress residential street which provides a safe and comfortable connection for people biking and walking. Neighborhood greenways often feature traffic calming elements to slow traffic. One of the alderman websites in the area states neighborhood greenways turn roads into places for people. They're residential streets with low speeds and low traffic volumes where people walking and biking are given priority. There's less than 1% of greenways in Chicago. People go out of their ways to seek safe routes to travel on. As mentioned, in 2017, when I started this, there were about 5 or 6 people being killed a year, and that number seemed unbearable. Cyclist deaths are now double what they used to be, and instead of it getting safer for the biking community, we're actually seeing it get more and more dangerous. I cannot begin to explain how demoralizing it is to buy materials to make ghost bikes in bulk to keep up with it. 3-year-old Lily was killed while biking with her parents in a bike lane on a neighborhood greenway when her family was pushed out into faster moving traffic. That traffic is not expecting them, and they were pushed out into traffic when the bike lane was blocked. Our database has documented over 33,000 bike lane obstructions. ComEd has been submitted to our database over 50 times over the years. Lily's death was not an accident. The factors that led to Lily's death were known problems, and they were preventable. As many of you know, bike lanes around the city are used for illegal parking. They're used as unmonitored construction sites. They're free distribution centers for companies, and they're extra travel lanes for motorists. On multiple occasions, Bike Lane Uprising has reached out to ComEd about their employees parking illegally in bike lanes, and we've also reached out to the city of Chicago about this specific company. We've asked for permit checks. In April 2019, Bike Lane Uprising tweeted to ComEd and the city, informing them about the illegal blocking of the bike lanes. urging both of them to prevent ghost bikes and asking for a permit check. ComEd responded to that tweet stating that they would address the issue. We then informed them that their drivers had been submitted to our database over 20 times, and we urged them to train their drivers on the issue. They've now been submitted over 50 times to our database. Even after Lily's death, in the very same month, they blocked the bike lane again. And like other construction work around the city, they're still continuing to be unmonitored. They're still getting permits to do this work. Semi-trucks are still driving down Leland Greenway, and drivers are continuing to park illegally in the bike lane, specifically in the same exact spot that Lily was killed. We know these tragedies will repeat again and again as long as city officials continue to ignore the biking community's calls for safer streets and protected bike lanes. The bicycling community is putting city leaders and businesses on notice. We care deeply about the safety in our communities, and we will report every bike lane obstruction in the effort to protect our neighbors. We will take every step necessary to hold accountable irresponsible drivers, specifically those that block bike lanes for a moment's convenience. In the city of Chicago, if the city of Chicago will not act to document and resolve bike lane obstructions, Chicagoans around the city will. Please report bike lane obstructions to our Bike Lane Uprising database, specifically the parties involved in this case. Thank you.